Welcome to the Financial Coaches Podcast, where we talk about how to build your practice from startup to scale up while being the kind of coach your clients crave. Finally, a podcast for financial coaches. Here are your hosts, Maria Casillas and Cody Sizemore.
Hello and welcome back to the Financial Coaches Podcast. My name is Cody Sizemore and I'm joined here by my lovely co-host Maria Casillas. And today we are going to be talking about something that's really, really important, especially for your just starting out coaching practice, if that is in the case to you. Probably like a really pivotal like topic that like you should absolutely have figured out. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So but, before we get into all that, I wanted to just say thank you guys for listening today, whether it be your first time listening or, you listen every single week and you're one of those every weekers, as we say. We really do appreciate you checking the show out. And if you like the episode or you got value from it, we would appreciate you if you were to leave a review or a rating and maybe even share the show too with someone that you might know that might get value from it as well. So with that being said, Maria, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you. A little tired. My fault. Mm-hmm. Happy to be here, though, and get back into the swing of things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I understand being tired, too, because I have that new baby, and she does not like to sleep. So I totally get it.
Yes, that is tough.
I get it. Yeah. All right. Well, as far as what we're going to talk about today, I think we just get straight into it. So this was actually a question from a coach that reached out to me personally. They came from the Facebook group, and which, by the way, if you haven't been a part of that yet and you're like, what Facebook group? It is called the Financial Coaches Community by New Money Habits. And you can find that on Facebook, get plugged in there, and we can connect and talk and have a really fun time. So with that being said, they did come from the Facebook group. They messaged me privately and asked me this question. I think that, there was like a little bit of like, I don't know, maybe like a little bit of embarrassment of like, this might be such a like simple question. But I just want to make sure I'm doing this right, So they messaged me privately and, because of that, I'll also keep their name anonymous here. And, they basically said, hey dude, I'm just getting started with this whole coaching thing. And one thing that I don't feel really confident about is helping people actually craft a budget. How do I do that? Like, what are the first steps of doing that? And I was like, that's a really, really good question. So, we kind of talked through it a little bit, and I told them that we would do an episode on that today as well. So here we are.
Yeah. So. Well, I think it's really interesting that this question came about because it truly is a foundational question. And I love that you were able to pick up on the potential embarrassment from this original author, because I just want to say that they say no question's a dumb question. I don't really totally believe that. I think there are some dumb questions. This is not one of them. And I just think that this is such a testament to the individual who reached out to you, because it's them recognizing their desire to serve well their clients, and also their ability to continue to be learners. So, you and I have talked before, Cody, about how oftentimes, especially new coaches, will jump into this and they'll go, I can help other people do what I'm doing because I've been doing this specific, whatever it is, whether it's a specific budget, a specific plan, and then people are watching me and they're seeing me get these results, and now they're asking me questions. And so it just makes sense that I hang my shingle out as a financial coach. That's how it happens for so many people. And then they recognize that while they're helping myriad people, they realize, oh my gosh, these people are not like me. They're not exactly the same. They have different priorities. They have different values. They have different circumstances. And so now they're like, how do I craft a budget around that person? And so I just wanted to say to whoever this was who reached out to you, kudos to you for recognizing that everybody has these differences and their budgets should look as unique, if you will, as their particular set of circumstances.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I agree. And, I think that one of the most important things that you said there is that like everybody is different. And sometimes, and even like, with the types of services that you're trying to help people with, like, even on my end, like, generally speaking, I help people get themselves out of debt and build up savings and stuff like that.
Mhm.
But there's other people that like, they kind of have that already done, and
Mhm.
they're looking to, do things around like, real estate investing, or they're looking to, purchase their first home or whatever it might be. So their financial plan and the structures around it might actually look a little bit different
Mhm.
than someone who's getting out of debt,
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different structures that you can do. I tend to gravitate towards one specifically. I know that you have worked with with people in the past where you've worked with different types, with like percentages and stuff like that. So
Mhm.
I'm sure that we
Mhm.
can get into that. But yeah, I mean, I think the big takeaway is that there isn't like a one size fits all kind of thing, you
Yep.
know.
Absolutely.
And I do think that he actually probably recognized that, because I'm sure that he had something for himself that worked relatively well. And
Yeah.
it's very easy to just say, well, I'm just going to have everyone do what I do, kind of
Mhm.
thing.
Mhm.
Um, so the fact that he's asking this, I think, is him actually recognizing that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. And that's why I wanted to put that out there, because I love the recognition of that, and also willingness to reach out for help,
Hmm.
because that's a really vulnerable thing to do as well. So,
Yeah.
so now that he's done that, let's go ahead and jump into what is well, we just got done saying that there's not one right way to do a
Mhm.
budget. But what is the typical framework that you start with when you are working with your new clients?
Yeah. So one thing I will say is that, like, a lot of people that you work with, they're very eager to get this budget, right?
Mhm.
Like,
Mhm.
they tend to think like, well, as long as I get the budget, then that's really what I need, kind of
Mhm.
thing.
Mhm.
And maybe it's something we can talk about later, but that's not all that they need. Like, there's a lot more than just budgeting, kind of thing.
Mhm.
So that's definitely part of it. But I think that there's even steps to take before we just hand over a budget for them, or we craft one with them, whatever it might be. And one thing that I like to do is I like to basically run an audit on them to kind of see what has been happening to their money up until this point. Because a lot of people will say they'll say the phrase, "I don't know where all my money goes,"
Mhm.
right? So in order for us to develop a plan of where it should go or where it can go, we first need to figure out what's actually been happening to it up until this point as well,
Mhm.
to show the tendencies, the habits, the trends that may have contributed to what got them in that place, that undesirable place, in the first place. So whether you want to call it like a spending analysis, or even like a financial audit, or I call mine like a money assessment plan and stuff like that, like whatever you want to call it. I do think that doing that is a good first step, and I'm happy to kind of outline at least what my processes look like around that,
Mhm.
if you'd like. I mean, I'm sure there's other ways of going about it, but I'm happy to at least outline mine.
Yeah, that would be wonderful.
Okay. So I work up a document, and I did this one time, and now I can just send it over to as many people as I want. But basically, I work up this like audit kind of document, and basically what it is it has a few different sections. So there's like an income section, there's an adjustment section for things like, if you're self-employed, tax withholdings, tithing, giving, stuff like that, right? Then there's an expenses section, and then there's a debt section, and at the bottom of it, it will show you, your total income, your total outgo, and whether or not you're in a surplus or a deficit, and also how much as well. So there's all those different sections, and then next to those, there's two columns. So one column would be a 3-month total, and the next one would be a 3-month average. And basically what I tell people to do is I want them to go into their transaction histories, into their accounts that have money going in and out, and record everything that happened over the last 3 months. And I warn people, I tell them, I'm like, this is going to take some time, and this is also probably going to be like one of, if not the biggest homework assignment that I'm going to give you of this entire program kind of thing, just ripping the Band-Aid off right away kind of thing, Um, so, basically what they'll do is they'll go back 3 months and they'll start tracking all this information, So for example, if, uh, let's say over the course of 3 months, someone generated $15,000 of income, well, they would put that into the 3-month total column. And then automatically using formulas, they press enter and it will then spit out in the 3-month average their average income monthly. So if they made 15,000 over the course of 3 months, then their average income would be $5,000 a month, kind of thing.
Okay.
And then you do the same thing with like your expenses, so things like groceries or restaurants or gas station stops or whatever it might be. Maybe you go through things with people and you find that they spent $2,400 on restaurants over the last 3 months. And that just shows, hey, on average, you spend $800 a month on restaurants kind of thing. And then same thing with the debts and so on and so forth. So what this does is it accomplishes a few things. Number one is that it gives us answers as to what has been happening and why they've been seeing and feeling the results that they have been up until this point. But then secondly, it's also a really big wake-up call for these people. I can't tell you how many times, Maria, that someone has done this spreadsheet, and then they come into this meeting where we're going to like discuss everything, which I'll discuss with you as far as what that looks like too in just a moment here. And they're like a dog with their tail between their legs, kind of thing. And I ask them right off the rip, I'm like, so as you went through this, what stood out to you? Before we jump into anything, I ask them that first every single time, and a lot of the times they'll be like, I didn't realize how much money we are just wasting or spending or whatever they say on XYZ expense. It's very eye-opening for them, which is a really good thing because I think that that's what's needed in order to actually start seeing that change happen, So that's kind of the whole process of like the first step. And then in that meeting where we come together and we discuss everything, basically what it looks like is, we have that sheet that they have filled out. And then there's another tab in the document to where it's like basically the same sheet, but it's clean. It's like a clean sheet. And what we'll do is we'll go through and we'll start moving things from the first sheet to the second sheet as we talk through each one and we refine it. So for example, if we see that someone is spending, $1,200 a month on restaurants and we see that that's the problem area, maybe we discuss that and we decide, hey, like we all agree here that it probably makes sense for you to actually spend more like, $500 or $600 a month on restaurants. So then, you just put that new number in the clean sheet. And after you go through all the different sections with them, you'll then look at their surplus and deficit from the first sheet and compare it to the surplus and deficit to the new sheet. And usually it's in a better place to where they have some sort of surplus that they can then use that to then move forward in the best way that they can. And that would essentially be the bones that then you take to then craft the budget with and for them, which of course is a next step. But I want to pause there. So
I do have a couple questions. One kind of goes back to step one. I didn't want to interrupt you while you were moving
you're
on
good.
to step two. So with step one, you mentioned that there are two columns that the data is pretty much collecting. One is the 3-month average, and then one is the 3-month actual or 1 month actual, right? 1 month actual, I think. So that's where my question comes in.
So there's a 3-month total, and then
total?
3-month total.
Okay,
and then a monthly average.
Okay, so
Yes.
that's the difference. So when this person is putting in the transactions, let's just use gas, for example. They're going through all of their statements and they are basically on the side adding up all of their gas, and then they're inputting that one number
Yes.
into this. Okay. So
Yeah.
that was one piece of clarification. And I appreciate that because the other way was like, oh my gosh, they have to enter all of those into that Excel, but that's not.
Mm-mm.
We're just having them
No.
lump them together. Okay.
Yeah.
The second question is regarding step 2. I just want to say I really like the psychological undertone of the clean slate. So I'm going to throw that out there for you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you intentionally did that. You probably did intentionally do that.
Well, no, I actually didn't. And
Okay.
you know what? So continue your thought, but I got something to say after that. But go ahead.
Okay. Well, you actually go ahead and say what you were going to say because mine's more of a question. I just wanted to think that
Yeah.
yes, it's cool that there's this clean slate. They're able to kind of start over and make decisions different than what was going on. But go ahead and say what you were going to say.
So I'll say two things. I actually call those two tabs something in my document, which the first sheet, the one that they fill out themselves, I title that old life, and then
Okay.
the clean sheet I title it empowered life.
Okay.
So
Cool.
it's kind of like a play on words there, but
Mhm.
that's one thing I wanted to say, and that is an intentional thing. The other thing I was going to say too is like, I know this is a podcast, but I also know that there are a lot of people who actually watch us on YouTube as well. So for a YouTube exclusive, I could actually just pull this up and share my screen and just
Oh,
show you what it looks like.
that would be awesome. While you're doing that, just for the interest of time, I'm going to ask my other question.
Go for it.
So my question is regarding your statement about, I think the example that you used was that if they spend $1,200 or $2,400 on food,
Mhm.
and then you decide that it was $500 would be a better number for them. My question is, how is that decision made?
Yeah. So basically, like the process that I go through is I tell them, um, when we look at this initially, there's going to be certain expenses that are fixed, and those don't change. They're the same every single month. So this might be like your rent or your mortgage. It might be your car insurance, your phone bill, something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So those ones, I typically just snag those and just move them over to the Empowered Life tab because there's not really a lot of discussion around that. They just kind of are what they are.
Do
Right.
you just grab the monthly average number to
Yeah.
plop those into the new life? Okay.
Yep. And then the variable expenses. So these are things that either do change every month or could potentially change moving forward. That is where we kind of go line by line and we just discuss them one by one. So, I tell everyone, like, I'm going to ask you questions and I'm not trying to sway you in any way. I just need to ask the questions because I need to.
Mhm.
Now, there might be a couple times where I feel like I do need to or want to sway you in certain ways. And if I do, then it will be blaringly obvious. but generally speaking, I'm just asking questions, right? So, for example, if we're talking about like um, streaming and subscriptions, right? There's a thing on the side here, which I'll actually just share my screen so I can just kind of show you. 1 second here. This is for the YouTube exclusive people, just so you guys know. So if you haven't checked us out on YouTube yet, here's your chance. You can see this, right, Maria?
I can, sir.
Okay. So this is what it kind of looks like, right? So we have the categories here, and you can see there's income, adjustments, expenses, debts, and at the bottom, the totals, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we have the 3-month total, and we have the 3-month average, and so on and so forth. So everything we basically talked about. So as you can see here with streaming and subscriptions, there's usually a lot of them for people. So next to it, I say, please provide a breakdown with the name and cost here. So what they'll do is they will say like, hey, I have Netflix for X amount. I have Paramount Plus for X amount. I have this for X amount and blah, 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 blah. So when we get here, this would be one of those variable expenses that we could talk about. And I would just open up the question and just say, looking at this list, is there anything in here that you guys feel like, you don't really use that much? It's not bringing you a ton of value, or that you feel like you just want to pause or cancel for the time being so we can make more progress? Or are you looking at this list and you're like, no, I actually want to keep all of these because I use them all, I get value from them, and I'm okay with keeping them? And that's what that opening conversation would look like.
Mm-hmm.
And if they say like, no, I want to keep them all, then I'm like, okay, cool. So let's keep them all. And, we would just move the number over to this empowered life. tab
Mm-hmm.
right here.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if they start talking through it and they're like, well, maybe we could do this, maybe we could do that. Sometimes it's a pretty clear answer as far as like, yes, I do want to cancel it. And sometimes one person might say, well, I don't care if we cancel it. And another person's like, well, maybe. And that's where I might start interjecting, being like, well, what values is actually bringing, and let's weigh the value of keeping it versus getting rid of it, kind of thing. And we just discuss it, and then I always leave it up to them. I always tell them, like, I'm here to guide you, I'm not here to tell you what to do. So this is ultimately up to you, but this is what I'm kind of seeing, and here's my perspective on it. And we just have that discussion. Same thing with, like, restaurants. So for example, if we do that 24.56, if they spent 24.56 on restaurants, you can see that the monthly average comes out to 818.67 kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And in that kind of scenario, I would say, well, how are you guys feeling about this number? And they might say, well, it's too high. It's way too high. And I'm like, okay, well, if you feel that way, then what do you think would make more sense for you based off of what you're trying to accomplish here moving forward? And then we just have a discussion around that. Maybe they'll start throwing out some numbers. They might throwing out some explanations as to why they go out to dinner, or what causes them to, or whatever it might be. And we just kind of do a back and forth conversation. And then at the end of the day, we just decide on a number and we move it over. And then, at the end of it, once we go through all the different sections, we can then see the difference between the surplus and deficit of their old life as compared to their empowered life. And we can decide, are we happy with this? Or is there anything else that we feel like we want to redo and re-go over, rediscuss, and refine it even more to either give yourselves a little bit more spending money, or potentially open up some more surplus, make a little bit more cuts somewhere, kind of thing. So
Yeah.
it's a process of just discussing it. Long story short.
Yeah, asking them, what are you going to say no to so that you can say yes to this thing over here?
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So, tell me about the right-hand side
Yeah.
of your screen.
Yeah. So there's another thing over here that says, there's like another section, which everything that we've discussed is on the left. And then there's a section on the right called prioritizing necessities and indulgences. And basically what I tell people to do with this is, I say, once you go through and you get all of these numbers plugged in, what I then want you to do is look at the list of expenses that you have and split them into these two lists. So one would be necessities and the other one would be indulgences. And then also rank those expenses in the order that you feel is most important to you. So for example, if someone is like, Cody, I cannot live without going bowling twice a week. I just can't function if I can't go to the bowling alley twice a week. I would be like, okay, well, that's a little strange, but that's fine. Put that as number one, as your indulgences, and then number two would go here, number three would go there, and so on and so forth. And the reason I have people do this is because it gives me an idea of what they actually think their necessities are, and what they actually think that their indulgences are. But it also gives me an idea of what's really important to them, so that when we are going through this, I don't make a suggestion that might step on their toes of something that they really value,
Mhm.
and that's something that's important to me
Yep.
personally. So,
So I'm noticing that your stuff on the right is much shorter in terms of length of column.
mhm.
Um, does that just expand then so that it accommodates all of the different expenses, or are they really just, it looks like about 10 or so, I'm not counting them, but or are they just listing like their top 10 necessities and indulgences?
Honestly, some people do all of them, some people do the top 10. you
Okay.
know
But what are
um,
you asking them to do? What, as you're working with them, what are you hoping that they will, what's the minimum amount that you want them to do?
yeah, I mean, obviously I'm hoping that they would just go through all of the different expenses that they have,
Okay.
and split them into these two lists, right?
Okay. Okay.
But there are some, like, if someone doesn't put in their mortgage as a necessity,
Yeah.
Obviously I understand that. Like, I get it. Your mortgage is obviously a necessity. Maybe it's redundant to put mortgage here, kind of thing,
Okay.
but for example, like someone might say, hey, you know, um, gifts are actually a necessity for me because
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big giver. That is how I, function. That's my love language. And that's not something that I really want to sacrifice here,
Mm-hmm.
whereas some people might say, hey, gifts are actually more so of an indulgence thing. It's something that I like to do. It's not something I have to do. So, just having that differentiating columns, it allows me to see how their brain works and what their perspectives are.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Cool. Very
Cool.
cool.
I'm going to stop.
So, um, well, I wanted to just add something that I do ahead of this process, but I don't want to do that until you are finished with what you want to share with our audience.
Oh, well, really, all I was going to say is that, like, that's the first step. And then talking about how to actually take this information and then go into crafting that budget with them.
Okay. So
So,
before you go into that, if I may step back for just a second, I just want
mhm.
to let our listeners know that what I do is kind of similar to that, but I do something ahead of that first. And that is kind of it's kind of creative because that's just how I'm built, I guess. But rather than just going with all the numbers, what we like to do to try to identify kind of like those indulgences and the essentials, or that you didn't call it essentials, I'm sorry, necessities, then we like to do that. I like to do that ahead of time. So we actually have them highlight in different colors. We like color categorize that, and then they just highlight the things in those colors so that we're not looking at specific numbers right away. Eventually we'll get to that. But first I want to see a pattern of behavior. And the just those different colors allow me to see that and allow them to see that. And what's really empowering about that for them is that they're the ones who see if I haven't highlighted this particular color, because I give them instructions as to what each color represents before they go
Mhm.
through and highlight. And then when they see a blank or unhighlighted transaction, they come to realize, oh, that's just waste. And they're using that word. And I'm not telling them that they're wasting money on whatever it is. And so it just becomes very eye opening, which is what you mentioned earlier. It's a very empowering thing for them. And it is kind of motivating because they realize I don't want my I was going to say life, but I don't want my finances to represent a life that is this out of balance. And so just being able to see it gives them that excitement to go, well, excitement is kind of a relative word, but to go
Yeah.
and actually do those numbers. So I will say that I did that. That's like my pre-step one, and then your step one. And then now feel free to move on to how you craft that budget from there.
Yeah. I love that you get creative with it. Let me just say that, I think that we've talked about that on the show before.
I'm sure we have. I'm sure we
Yeah.
have. And this, I only throw it in there again because it's right in this particular spot where it is most useful.
Hmm. Yeah. Yep. Definitely. Um, so just in the interest of time, we've already talked about how there's numerous different types of strategies for budgeting.
Mhm.
Um, we could list them all, we could give examples on them all, but we would be on here for a long time. So, in the interest of time, I'm just going to focus on what I primarily do and what I kind of see is like the most popular one, the one I think makes the most sense for most people.
Okay.
And that would just be a pretty common one. I think it's, pretty well known. It's the zero-based budget, right? Which I
Okay.
know that you have a love-hate relationship with it. I
It's
know.
okay.
I know. Um, but, just talking about it because I think it's probably the most common type, you know. So essentially, like the process of doing that is, you'd want to do something very similar to what you did with the audit setting, to where, like, you'll have different columns in this, and this is if you were to do something with like Google Sheets, right? Some people, I know some coaches that actually help people budget off of different apps, so like they might use Every Dollar. They might use YNAB. They might use there's a couple other ones out there too. Like, so that you can find an app if you really like it, or if you like the Google Sheets route, which is what I prefer. You can do that too. So with this Google Sheets route, I'm going to kind of show you and talk through what that kind of looks like.
Okay.
So there would be a column for categories.
Do you want to just share your screen again? Or
Sure, I can do that. Yeah.
okay.
Give me one
You have
second.
one that's blank, I presume, so we're not sharing anybody's
Yep.
information.
Yep. I got to pull it up first. I don't know if you want to talk or whatever, but just okay. So I got it pulled up now. I'm just selecting the correct screen.
Okay. And I
And
didn't need to talk. Way to do that fast.
yeah, there you go. Here we go. Okay. So this is what mine kind of looks like. So as you can kind of see here, like there's a few different sections with columns and everything like that. But, generally speaking, we have these columns here, which would be your categories for all the different things that may have been in that audit, which you can obviously tailor it for, the individual specifically. Then we have due dates. So there's two due date columns as well. And that basically is housing like their pay schedules and when their bills are actually due and all that kinds of stuff. Then we have the budget columns, which this is what we're planning for to happen. So a lot of like the numbers that we came out of that empowered life tab with the audit, that's where those numbers would go. So the average number for the income, the average number for your electric and gas and utilities, and so on and so forth. This is what we're planning for to happen. And then what I think is the most important column is the actual columns. And I say this is the most important one because this is where people who try and budget on their own, this is the one thing that people forget to do.
Agreed.
They have all the names, they
Especially
have the due dates, they have what they want to spend, but then they don't track what actually happens. So this is definitely the most important one in my
I was
opinion.
going to say, especially with a zero-based budget, and that's I think where that
Yes.
love-hate relationship comes from, because when we do the zero-based budget, it's ahead of the month, and so many times people forget to come back and recognize what they actually did.
Yep.
And that's where we recognize here's where the thinking took us off guard. Here's where our behavior is and how does it not match up. And so that's really my biggest argument against it. So I really appreciate that you're being able to squash that argument by actually walking through the real behavior with your clients.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. So that's pretty much it as far as like the different columns. And then, we have like different sections in here, as you can see. So we have like an income section, we have an adjustment section, we have maybe like a bigger bills section, a debt section, a smaller bills section, a daily living section, and a financial goals section as well. Um, and with every section, there's like a couple formulas so that there's like a subtotal for that section specifically. So for example, let's just say that there's like 5 bills here or 3 bills here for $300 or $100 each. So subtotal for that one section would be $300 kind of thing. And if we started with $5,000 worth of income, well, after this one section, there would be a budget remaining of $4,700 because we had $300 in this one section and so on and so forth, right? So there's some formulas in here that kind of show you a running total of, where your income is as compared to your expenses after each section in line. And that goes for both your budget columns and your actual columns. And that kind of shows people like, where their money's going and also how much they have at any given point during the month. Making sure that things are kind of accurate with their budget as compared to their bank account, all that different types of things. And that's essentially it, and you just kind of build this up for people. And you have a little bit of a note section too, if you'd like, and I just tell people they can put whatever they want in there. And that's essentially it as far as like how I kind of structure things.
Okay. So 2 questions. One, when you help them add the actual stuff, or when they do that, do you then use that to help create the next month? That's one question. Okay.
Yep.
And then the
So
second
what I do with that, just to kind of give you a heads up on that.
Yeah.
So let's say that this entire thing is filled out and they completed a month. I just tell people to duplicate the sheet and it will create a copy. And then you just clear out all the actual numbers and you update the dates and you're good to go. And that way you have every month recorded records as well.
There is one thing I would say that I do a little bit differently, and that's not just duplicate everything, but if there was an actual that was pretty far off from the budget, we want to make sure that we tweak that as well. Whether, right? Okay. I just wanted to throw that out there. So it might not look exactly the same, because that's the other, it's one of the arguments for a zero-based budget done monthly, is that you can shift it as your month changes. Like here in Arizona, for example, we'll have a $600 electric bill in the summer and a $100 electric bill in the winter. So just to be able to, if someone's not averaging it out, to be able to plan accordingly. So
exactly. And that's something that I'm glad you brought that up, because there's sometimes where like people will go over budget, let's say, for example, on their fund money, right? That's a pretty common thing to happen, right? So, if their fund money is set at like $600, let's just say, and they spent, $897 or something like that. After 1 month, I probably wouldn't change it. I would just discuss it with them, see what they kind of felt, how they feel about things, what their takeaways were, and then go into the second month and see how things go, make those adjustments. And if they are improving to where maybe they spent $700, so they're still over, but they're improving, then I would still probably keep it and see if they can actually hit that, over the course of a couple of months. Now, if it's like, 3 or 4 months in a row to where or even like groceries, that might be a better example. 3 or 4 months in a row, they're constantly going over on their groceries. Well, that's probably like an indication of like, maybe we didn't assess this properly when we first went through the audit and we were refining things. So let's make a more realistic adjustment for this moving forward. And then we just adjust it, kind of thing.
Yep. Super, super important part of it. So the second question was really a simple one. It's, you do this in Google Sheets so that you can both have access to it.
Correct.
And I am assuming that they're the ones inputting all of the actual stuff throughout the month or at the end of the month, not you doing it with them. And then you have access to see whatever they do whenever they're doing it. Is that accurate?
That's absolutely correct. Yes.
Okay. Very good.
Yeah.
And I do see that you have the debt snowball as another tab on yours for those of you who are not seeing this. So this would be them filling out their debt snowball information. They have access to see where they currently stand with that. And that's intended to help motivate them as well.
Yes. Yep, exactly. And it also helps me to see where they're at, what debt we're actually working on, at what time, all that kinds of stuff. So
very, very good. Well, thank you for being willing to share that on the screen. So those of listeners who are actually also watchers are able to really kind of dig in and see firsthand what that looks like. Because there are a bajillion budgets out there, and we encourage you to create your own too, like that, make it look like something that you would do well to work with somebody. But just seeing something concrete is super helpful. So thank you for that.
Yeah, of course. All right. Well, I think we covered the whole topic of how to help clients craft a budget. Would you agree?
I would. I'm sure there are other questions that might come up, but I encourage all of our listeners to go ahead and reach out to us. It's fun to get in just those personal messages from our listeners. So yeah, if there's anything that we haven't answered and you have a very specific question, feel free to reach out and ask us or put it in the group. We'll be happy to look there too.
Absolutely. Alrighty, guys. Well, thanks for listening to this episode of the Financial Coaches Podcast. We will be back next week with a brand new episode. It's going to be amazing. So check it out. We'll see you then.
Bye, guys.
Thank you for listening to the Financial Coaches Podcast, brought to you by New Money Habits and Sizemore Financial Coaching. Submit your questions to our hosts by emailing podcast@newmoneyhabits.com. Be sure to subscribe to be notified of future episodes and join our growing group of like-minded coaches on Facebook. And until next time, happy coaching.